Whatcha Know Joe?
I don't know nothing.
Whatcha Know Joe?
Tell me something.
Whatcha Know Joe?
Welcome to the Whatcha Know Joe podcast. Some time ago, I had a very special guest named Jonathan Sanger. He's a terrific producer, a very good friend, and has just produced an outstanding film. So it is with great satisfaction, excitement, respect, and enthusiasm that I say, welcome again, Jonathan Sanger. And
Thank you, Joe.
all right, buddy. I gotta know, how did you become involved with Cabrini? And by the way, what the movie we're talking about is Cabrini.
And the movie is Cabrini. You can see the poster behind me. Well, I'll tell you, it was an interesting set of circumstances. I was in New York. I was seeing a friend of mine who's a hedge fund manager who's always promised me that he wanted to fund a movie, but of course never has. You know, we've known each other for 20 years. And he calls me up one day and he says, look, I know this very wealthy guy in Philadelphia, and he wants to make a movie, but he doesn't know anything about making movies. And when I talked to him, I thought, you are the guy, you should produce it. So I said, okay, I'll meet anybody. Does he have the money? And he says, oh, he's got all the money in the world. It's not an issue about money. This is just about you. You're the right guy. So I said, okay. And he sets up a meeting for me to meet Eustace Wolfington. And that's a real name, I promise you. And Eustace Wolfington is, at the time I meet him, he's probably 89 or 88 or 89 years old. Very, very vigorous guy. And he meets me at the New York Athletic Club, a place that I don't normally frequent. In any event, I go to the New York Athletic Club to have lunch with him. And I say, look, I hear you want to make a movie. What's the movie? And he says, well, I'm interested in making a movie about this saint, Francesca Cabrini. And after he tells me a little bit more, and I knew nothing about Cabrini other than the name, as anybody from New York would probably know. There's Cabrini Boulevard in Queens or in the Bronx. There's the Cabrini School in Brooklyn. I come from Brooklyn, so I've heard the name before, but I didn't know anything about who that was. But my initial reaction to him was, I think it's a good idea. You want to make this movie, but I'm not the right guy. And he says, you're not the right guy? I said, no, I don't think I'm the right guy. He said, well, why? I said, well, I like making movies about real people, which I've done my whole career, and I find that I continue to really do that. I mean, last movie I made was Marshall, which is about Thurgood Marshall. The Elephant Man was my first movie. It was also about a real character, Frances. Without Limits, which is about Steve Prefontaine. They're all movies about real people. I said, but I like making movies about people that other people can relate to, and I don't know how to relate to a saint. And he looked at me and he says, no, you're missing the point. It's not about she became a saint long after she died, and it's not about that. He said, this is a woman empowerment story. And it is really it's not in any way a religious movie. It's a movie about a woman who happened to be a nun. Not about a nun. It's not a movie about a nun, and it's not in any way kind of a faith-based kind of a movie. So that kind of intrigued me when he said it was a movie about a woman empowerment story, and also a story about a woman who was an incredible entrepreneur. And I didn't know anything about it, so he started telling me a little bit about it. And, I said, well, maybe I should read some stuff, because there was no script or anything at the time. And I read a couple of books about her. And she was a pretty fascinating lady. And she did things women didn't do at that time, almost ever. It was, she was extraordinarily ambitious and was able to do things in New York City initially that women didn't do. I mean, she was consistently overlooked. People always assumed that she would not be able to do the things she wanted to do. And she always figured out a way, because she knew something that we in the film business tend to learn very early, that the middle management can only say no. If you want to get a yes, you've got to go to the top, always. So that you go to a you go to a studio executive. It's always no. I mean, it's easy for them to say no because then the project disappears and no one ever hears of it. But if they say yes, and their boss then says no, they may lose their job. So they don't want to take that opportunity. So they'd rather say no. Well, she understood that very early, that in all businesses, you had the middle people who could say no, and only the person at the top who could say yes. And she always, even in the church, she would say to the cardinals who would tell her she couldn't do something, she would say, "Is that your opinion or is that the Pope's opinion?" And they'd say, "Well, if I'm saying it to you, it's the Pope's opinion too." And she'd say, "Well, if it's all the same to you, then I'd like to hear it from him." And she would always get to the top person in every circumstance and figure out a way to convince that person. And that was the way she got to do the things she did. She had to convince the mayor of New York, not the deputy mayor, but the mayor. She had to go to the cardinal of New York, not some middle-level priest, but it had to be the cardinal if she wanted to do something involving the church or even involving any of the social programs.
I say this to you because I have told you this, and I'll say it publicly and proudly. I think this is the best produced film I've seen in a decade, and I'm not shy about that. This may get us a little off track. Whose idea was shooting it in Buffalo?
Mm-hmm.
Was that you? Did you?
That was my idea.
Yeah,
That was definitely my idea because what had happened, well, I'll tell you. I mean, we were looking at other places. The guy who financed it said, "I hear it's really cheap to film in Eastern Europe." And I said, "Well, it is. That's true. But it's not easy to find, New York City in 1900 in Eastern Europe, number one. Number two, we're in a pandemic right now, and it was just the beginning of the pandemic. And I said, getting actors to go to Hungary in the middle of a pandemic, not an easy thing to do. We're going to have to bring crew in and all this stuff. I think it's going to be very complicated. It might ultimately, maybe it would be cheaper, but I don't think it will be better." And I said, so he said, "Well, where else could we go?" And I said, "Well, we could look in Montreal," which we did. We thought of Montreal as a possible place. But all the buildings in Montreal they're old, but they all look kind of French. They don't look like American buildings. Buffalo, I had done a movie in Buffalo just recently. I had done Marshall. And I knew Buffalo had incredible architecture. And every major American architect worked there. So you can find pretty much any period. And the biggest thing we needed to find was the 5 Points area of New York City. We went to New York City first, but none of it exists anymore. And you could not shoot it in New York even if it had. So, I mean, it's very complicated and difficult to shoot. And moving, as anybody knows who shoots in New York City, if you want to move from one location to another, you better do it overnight. Don't try to do it within a day. You'll never be able to do it. Buffalo is not like that. You don't have rush hours quite the way they do in New York. And they also have all these old brick warehouses, which, basically come from its time as a big manufacturing city. But once manufacturing and the steel industry left Buffalo, they left all these old warehouses that were empty. And we figured, hey, we can work with a whole bunch of warehouses and build false fronts on them. And that was how we built our 5 Points. But I brought the director, the designer.
So one of the things that strikes me is very courageous, amazing, and I know Christiana because I met her at your house, and she's a terrific young woman. But this relatively unknown to American audiences actress carries that movie tremendously. Whose idea? That takes a lot of guts. I mean,
Again, if this had been a major studio film, there wouldn't have been any choice. We would have had to go with a major star. We looked at major stars. We looked at Lady Gaga and Natalie Portman and people like that, thinking that was the way, if this had been a major studio, we'd have to do that. But it was really, and I'm trying to think, it was, it was one of the people in Italy who we were talking to because we needed some Italian support for the project, and they said, you really have to have an Italian actress, someone who speaks Italian fluently, who can also speak English. And it changed. I mean, our casting director really, really enforced that. The casting director, Denise Shamian, who's amazing, said, no, there's this woman in Italy that you should meet. And that was the woman, Cristiana Dell'Anna, who wound up getting the role. But she's very well known in Italy. She did a series called Gomorrah, which is a huge international series, but she had not done almost anything in the U.S. And it was during the during the pandemic, so that we couldn't meet actors. We had to only see them on video. That was the only way we could meet her.
By the by, they said at the Academy Awards next year is going to be the first year they're going to have an award for casting. And I don't think I'd be too far out on the limb to say that your film might qualify. In fact, I'm going to do my little spiel here. I think, Hollywood, you think about producers. What's a producer? Well, you could tell a producer he drives a Mercedes and he's got CAA on his cell phone. Oh, that's a producer. This is the best produced film I have seen in a decade. And if it doesn't get 6 or 8 Academy nominations next year, Hollywood is all talk. Anybody who knows filmmaking knows this is a really special film. That's it.
Well, thank you. No, I mean, look, I don't think about producing any more than, I just think the job is something that is about putting things together. And that's what I try to do every time. And I had great people. But a lot of it had to do with, making the right choices at every stage. Picking the right actor was something that we all had to agree upon. Luckily, because we were an independent film, we only had to convince one person, who was our financier, and he didn't know much about the Hollywood style of things. So we said, look, the character is really the star of this movie, and let's make a star rather than have a star take us out of the movie because we're looking at somebody who we know and is not the character. If it's Lady Gaga, it's not Mother Cabrini. It's it has a different quality to it, and he got it.
Great films are made by great choices.
I think so. But they're always incrementally small, Joe. You think they're big choices, but every choice as you make it seems very small. But in the aggregate, it all comes together when every choice works, and that really was the excitement of this movie.
Why I got so enthralled about the project is not only you have good people, but you let them do good work. I believe that a good producer leads and allows the talent to rise, which I think is what you did. If you say, what's the one thing about this movie? I say, Jonathan elevated the talent so they could really shine. And I think that's going to come back to you, man. I really do. Was this company going to want to make other films?
I don't think so. To me, this is this was a once in a lifetime experience for the man who put up the money and arranged for the financing. And I don't think he's looking to make any more movies. I think this was the movie he wanted to make. And I was excited to have the opportunity to work with him. And my greatest hope is that the success of the movie, or at least the quality of the movie, allows me to be able to raise money, which is the fuel for independent filmmaking. You got to find the fuel. Unlike when you make a movie with a studio where they put up all the money, on an independent, which has a lot of value, and there's a lot of good reasons to do things independently, but the hard part is you got to raise all the money too, and you got to figure out a financial plan that's going to make sense. That's always hard. That's the hardest part for me altogether. Making the project is much easier than funding it. Yeah, it opened in 2,900 theaters, and obviously we had a very, very good first weekend, and we're hoping to hold on to our theaters. And imagine 2 years ago saying that you were opening a movie in 2,900 theaters. Not even a thought. It wouldn't have happened. I mean, at the end of the pandemic, we were wondering whether anyone would go back to a movie theater other than to see perhaps a Marvel, movie or, sequel or something like that, or a comic book. This is neither a comic book nor a sequel nor an action movie. And to open it in 2,900 theaters is a big, big risk on somebody's part, but I'm very excited that they did it.
But your answer just knocked out my next question, which is will you stay involved with the company? But the company isn't staying involved with the company, it sounds like.
No, I think I mean, look, I'm very pleased that this distribution company came in at I mean, we had many offers for distribution. I will say that. We had about 4 offers, and we chose to go with maybe in some ways the least likely company because it was not a big major, but they loved the movie so much and they were so behind it that we felt that they would really take very good care of it, and also they would listen to us. I mean, one of the big issues we've always had as producers at major studios is you could bring them the movie, you could have written the movie the day after you finish shooting and you've completed post production. They say, bye bye, we'll see you later. And I say, well, wait a minute. You still have to market it. They said, yeah, well, we know how to do that. I said, well, wait a minute. Why wouldn't you let me stick around? Because I might have an idea. I've been with the movie for 4 years and you've been with it for 10 minutes. And they say, no, we know how to do that. That's what we do. You don't know how to do that. So you never really get an opportunity. Whereas with a company like Angel, which is the company that is distributing this movie, they're interested in our thinking. They have meetings with us every week. We talk to them twice a week, and we arrange, we think about, when it comes to the poster, when it comes to marketing strategy, theaters, what to do, all of that. I mean, they're the ones who are spending the money for it, so they don't feel obligated to take our opinion on things, but they're certainly going to listen, and if we have a good idea, they're going to act on it, and that's great. That's great.
Tell me about the conversations you're having with young filmmakers today.
I have conversations with young filmmakers all the time. I have a partner, MJ, Mike Jones, and the two of us find it really important to work with young people all the time. I mean, we are very responsive to new filmmakers, new people. Here's MJ. You can say
guys.
Hello. And we basically we basically meet with young filmmakers. We encourage young filmmakers, just as Joe did when he was at SC, but we do it in a less structured fashion because we're not dealing necessarily with just film students, but many of them are. And we also tend to, I did a lot of work with short films in my career, and I'm still helping produce short films with new directors, at least executive producing. I mean, giving them advice and helping them because I believe that I want to support that future filmmaking group, and there's so many great people out there doing it. So, yes. I mean, there's no doubt that that's a major source of excitement for me is to see new people coming up in the business.
So what are you doing next? What do you want to do next? I know you want to keep making movies.
Well, I have a particular movie that I'm hoping to get made. It's a movie about the Wright brothers. I mean, I love doing historical projects, and this is a great story that nobody's really told. And it was really about the race to get into the air. And it was between the Wright brothers and Samuel Langley. You've heard of Langley Air Force Base. Well, he was funded by the U.S. government. And when he finally took his plane off, had to take off, after a big parade in Washington, D.C., the plane went right down and landed in the Potomac and crashed. And he came out that day and said, it'll take 50 to 100 years before man is able to conquer the air. 5 days later, the Wright brothers took off at Kitty Hawk. And it's the story of that kind of Ford versus Ferrari type story. But it's a wonderful script, and I'm hoping to find some people to fund it. So that's my next, hopefully that'll be certainly one of the next projects I'd love to do.
I could rattle on about how much I like the project for a while. Is there anything else you want to put out there?
No, no, I love the project. It was a great experience for me. I think it's, one of the things about movies, and this was something that Reggie Hudlin said to me. Reggie, who is the director of Marshall, said to me, movies. A lot of people think movies are medicine. Movies are not medicine. Movies are basically entertainment. I mean, if they have something that goes along with the entertainment that elevates you or makes you think, that's an added benefit. But that's not what it's about. And I totally agree with him. I don't think movies are medicine. I don't think we go to the movie like taking a pill. But I think a movie like Cabrini is a movie that leaves you with some hope and also leaves you with a feeling that if this woman with absolutely nothing could do these many things, what could I do? Maybe I can do something for people who are less fortunate than I. That's the hope, and I hope that's what the story, inspires.
It's a great way to end, John. It's a great film. It's a great job of that film. And, keep on trucking, man. I'll
Great.
talk to you soon. And
Thank you,
thanks for
guys.
doing-
No, thank you. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. Thanks, Vince. Thanks, Joe.